The film is called Separate We Come, Separate We Go, and the story first came from the landscape itself, where we shot the film called Dungeness, which is in Kent in England. The narrative very much sprung from the place, which I guess is quite unusual really in terms of its development. And I spent a lot of time there when I was younger, so I kind of know it inside out and have been incredibly inspired by this place, sort of because of its sort of vast space and kind of surrealness of the place. You just get that sort of quite cathartic sort of feeling, and I just wanted to basically have a character which experienced what I sometimes feel within that space, and that's how I then wrote the story of a young girl basically going to this place, coming from quite a sort of bleak and claustrophobic life, to show a real arc for her. I needed her to come from quite a different starting point in order to clearly show her ending in a new space. For me, you know, obviously it takes a lot of confidence to direct something, and something that one element that I knew I was going to be comfortable in was the sort of language between myself and the actors, because I'd experienced it myself, and I kind of knew from experience how some direction is really helpful and sometimes it isn't. So obviously informed the film massively, but at the same time I learned so much more about myself and about directing from doing this film. And just in, you know, the space of 9 months that we made it, all of us learned a great deal about the process that we had already been learning about in our degree, but kind of really solidified all those different things. And it was a production that completely stood as a sort of professional production. Like, the development of all the ideas were really solid, and we worked incredibly hard before we shot the film. And you know, if we hadn't have really developed those ideas from the beginning and our sort of the collaborative sort of process, then the shooting of the film wouldn't have been as successful as it was. Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, obviously when I wrote the story, I kind of knew that would be an issue in which would be difficult, especially for someone who hasn't had that much experience. But I don't know. I think it's interesting, and you create a whole different relationship when you're working with a child, and they bring a really lovely energy to the set. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's definitely, you know, I owe it to them as much as, you know, anything else. I mean, it was really important, that one read that we did have before we shot the film. I mean, you know, David Thewlis is an incredibly experienced actor who has had to play so many different roles, and I think, you know, he has a daughter that's a bit younger than Emily, so I think that really helped, that idea of him understanding that sort of fatherly kind of relationship that does develop between the two of them. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not meant to be autobiographical really in any way. She was actually the only person we saw with red hair. The look that we all wanted was someone with quite fair features that would stand out in the landscape. Kind of a mixture of things. I mean, when we first joined together, the sort of 7 core of us, I decided that before even sitting down and talking about the film, that I just needed to take everyone to the space, and I was like, I'm not even going to talk about the narrative, let's all just go to this location, to Dungeness, and a lot of it will speak for itself. And I think it really did. That was definitely a good idea, because for me, I know the space so well, so I'll start talking about ideas and people cannot contextualise it at all. So the minute we went down there, I think a lot made more sense. I mean, for me, it's kind of, if I can continue both, that's what I really want to do. You know, both really inform each other, and I kind of like to be busy all the time. So when I'm not acting, I want to be directing, and I sort of really want to try and sort of develop my voice within short films. I don't want to go into feature films directing-wise for quite a long time. So yeah, I just want to try and sort of look at different genres or different mediums. You know, we shot the film on 16mm, looking at the difference between shooting on digital, or looking at the difference between, you know, if I directed something that I hadn't written, you know, have a completely different connection to the film if you do. So yeah, just to kind of keep pushing myself and trying different ideas, really. I mean, I think no matter what scale of film set you ever go on, there's obviously kind of a a language that is similar that runs throughout filmmaking, but I think it is incredibly different in terms of the product and the product that comes out of it, and also the development that goes into it. I think when you make an independent film or a short film, everyone's got a real sort of creative voice within the filmmaking process, and it's not as sort of, there's not such a strong hierarchy, or there's not such a strong sort of department sort of segregation. Like, everyone very much works as a team, and that's what I really love. I mean, I think the post-production was also incredibly hard. I think, you know, you've shot all this material that you love, but you can't have it all, and you've got to find, you know, you've almost got to re-find your story in post-production. You know, the story changed quite a lot in terms of some areas that I thought there was going to be more focus on, like the beginning was changed, and yeah, you had to find a whole new rhythm, and sometimes you did, as a director, you can often be quite overprotective, and you do have to step back and allow the editor to sort of put their new spin on the piece, which once I did do that, it was incredibly successful. Yeah, it's been received really well. We've had, you know, lots of people watching it, and lots of articles and reviews about it. It's just been really interesting from our perspective, to see sort of how it works, and what you can gain from being here as a sort of young filmmaker. And it's just nice to speak to other people who are in the same position and have been making the same films. And yeah, I think as any, you know, cinephile or any kind of cinema lover, to come here and watch as many films as you can and soak up that sort of side of things. I mean, for me, one thing I don't know a lot about really is sort of production development or distribution, or all those things, so it's interesting to learn those sides of things. Well, I've got 2 films this year that I'm acting in, both independent films, one American one called Shakespeare's Daughter, and then another British independent film called In Want of a Wife. But then in between that, kind of developing a new idea for a short film, and then also when I get back from Cannes, I'm shooting, directing a music video. So.